right, guys, let's get into the next one. We've done single-step equations and we've done two-step equations. Today we're doing multi-step equations. And this is section 2.02. And we're going to start with combining like terms. So I've got an example here, and I'll zoom in a little bit. This problem, example apple, says 2x plus 12 equals 78. Now, we're looking at this. We all know that if I have two x's and I add another x, I get 3x. I still want to show that distributive property to just make sure I'm being as complete as I can in my steps. You don't have to do this all the time, but I think it's a good idea just as we get going until that really becomes ingrained in your head. So what I'm going to do is recognize, okay, 2x I get, and then x is 1x. So now I've got these two coefficients here. So I'm going to take out the x like that. And you can confirm that because if I were to distribute the x, I would have x times 2, that's the 2x, and x times 1, that's the 1x. I'm going to bring everything else down. Now I've got 2 plus 1 in the parentheses, so that does become the 3x. Plus 12 equals 78. All right, no problem there. Now what we have is pretty standard two-step equation because we've got two operations going on. Hopefully from the last lesson, you know that your first step here is to subtract 12. You can do the roadmap on the side if you like. I'm going to omit it for now. But to cancel a plus x, I'm going to to cancel a plus 12, I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. Okay, positive 12 and negative 12 cancel, so I'll bring down the 3x equals 78 take away 12 is 66. Now I've got 3 times x. The opposite of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3. The 3's cancel. I'm left with x, so x equals 22. So there you go, pretty straightforward problem. I'm going to do another one, and this is example pumpkin. And it's going to be a little bit different, not a lot different, but again, always ask yourself, how is this problem different from the one above when you're doing the homework? So in this problem, we've got 8y plus 16 minus 2y equals 46. Now, what makes this problem different is that the variable terms are not next to each other. Up here, we had the 2x and the x right next to each other. Now the y terms are spread apart. So I'm going to use the commutative property to switch the negative 2x and the 16, and that'll put the 8y and the 2y next to each other. So I've got 8y minus 2y plus 16 equals 46. And then using that reverse distributive property, I'll take out the y, and I've got 8 minus 2, the y outside, plus 16 equals 46. Okay, now there's the 6. So I'm going to go 8 minus 2 and get 6y plus 16 equals 46. And again, I'm really doing these steps for clarity. We'll get to the point where we're going to skip those steps because we can look at the problem and know that 8y minus 2y is 6y. But for now, I'm just going to throw those steps in. A positive 16 gets canceled by subtracting 16 from both sides. So the 16s cancel, and I bring down the 6y equals, and now I've got 30. Okay? To cancel out the 6 times y, I'm going to divide by 6 on both sides. 6's cancel, and y equals 5. So there's another example of combining like terms. But that's not the only kind of multi-step equation you're going to run across. So let's do a couple with grouping symbols. And we'll start with the problem, let's do example mincemeat. Do you know what the category for today's examples are? Up here you might have thought it was fruits and vegetables. Actually, if I throw in mincemeat, it's actually pies, types of pies. So here's your example. I've got negative 2, then a parenthesis, m minus 4 equals 12. Okay, so see the grouping symbol? So we're going to have to distribute and then we can solve. But not necessarily. I'll show you two ways to do this problem. Let's start by distributing, because I think this is how most people would tackle the problem the first time they see it. So negative 2 times n, that's negative 2m, and negative 2 times negative 4 actually becomes a plus 8 equals 12. Now it's a standard two-step equation. The opposite of adding 8 is subtracting 8. Okay, the 8's cancel because 1 is positive and 1's negative. Bring down the negative 2m equals 4. 12 minus 8 is 4. And then just divide both sides by negative 2. The negative 2's cancel, we're left with m equals negative 2. 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. Now there is another way to do this. So let's put or, because there's another way to tackle this problem. Let's put the same problem down. I've got negative 2 times m minus 4 equals 12. Now, what I noticed is this negative 2 will go into 12. So if I divide both sides by negative 2 to start with, that negative 2 in the numerator will cancel with the negative 2 in the denominator. These two cancel each other out. And on the left-hand side of the equal sign, I'm left with m minus 4 equals negative 6, because 12 divided by negative 2 is negative 6. Now, it's a simple one-step equation. To get rid of a negative 4, I add 4, and those cancel, and m equals negative 2. So you get the same answer. So I wanted to show you that there were, in fact, two different ways to do that problem. Now, I want to show you a couple examples with fractions in them, because there's some special ways to handle fractions. So let's put this aside, and we'll go to page 2 of 2. And this is going to be equations with fractions. All right, and I think I'm using green for this one. Sorry about that, you couldn't see it. Equations with fractions. And this is going to be example custard. So custard pie. So we've got 2x over 3 plus x over 2 equals 7. Now, you could do this by a whole bunch of different ways. So I'm going to show you two different ways, and you can decide which one you like best. Now, the first way is to go get a common denominator. Now, the common denominator between 3 and 2 would be 6. So I would take the first fraction and multiply it by 2 over 2. Because see, 2 times 3 is 6. And then I would take the second fraction and multiply it by 3 over 3 equals 7. I don't have to do anything with this over on the right-hand side. So if I carry out the multiplication here, I've got 4x over 6 plus 3x over 6. Notice the common denominator equals 7. Now, I've got two terms with the common denominator, so I can combine those. And I've got 4x plus 3x over 6 equals 7, and I can combine those to 7x over 6 equals 7. Now, what we would do is we can multiply both sides by 6 and then divide both sides by 7, or if you remember back to one of the previous lessons, we can multiply by the reciprocal of that fraction. Okay, now notice 7 in the numerator cancels with 7 in the denominator, 6 in the numerator cancels with 6 in the denominator, and I'm left with x equals, here this is 7, I can think of that as 7 over 1. 7 in the numerator cancels with 7 in the denominator, and I'm left with 6 over 1, or just 6. So there's the answer. There is another way to do this, so I'm going to put or in here. And I'll write the original problem again. I've got 2x over 3 plus x over 2 equals 7. Now, what if I could get rid of the fractions all at the same time? My common denominator is 6. So what I'm going to do in this problem is I'm going to multiply both sides by 6. So I've got 6 times 2x over 3 plus x over 2. Now this time I do have to do it to both sides because I'm multiplying the left side by 6. So to maintain the equality, I have to do 6 times 7 on the other side. Otherwise it wouldn't be equal anymore. Now when I distribute the 6, watch what happens. 6 times 2 is 12, divided by 3 is 4, so that's 4x. And 6 times 1 is 6, divided by 2 is 3x. Equals, and I've got 42. But notice what happened. The fraction, the denominators disappeared. Now I simply have 7x, 4x plus 3x is 7x, equals 42. And I divide both sides by 7, and x equals 6, because the 7's cancel, and we're left with the x. Okay, so either way, you're going to get 6 as the answer, which is important. I mean, if you don't get the same answer, then you know something went wrong. But I wanted to show you that you had two different ways to solve that with the fractions.